I want you to take a moment and think about if you were to move to another country, how would you choose which country to move to? You might have said you will research the type of government that this country has. If it has an unlimited type of government where citizens do not have many freedoms, you might not want to go to that place. You might have said you will research that country's geography or their climate. If the country's climate is good, you might consider moving there. If the country's climate is too cold or too hot, you might not want to go there. You might research what language is spoken in that country. If maybe people in that country speak the language that you already know, it will be easier for you to adapt when you move to that country. Another thing that you can research is how healthy the economy of that country is. How is their economy doing? You might want to look at their economic development level. Countries of the world are not developed equally. There are some countries that are more developed, and there are some countries that are less developed. So, how do we know which countries are more developed and which countries are less developed? Well, we use economic indicators to research that. Economic indicators are statistics that can provide information about a country's economy. They also provide information about how well people in a certain country are doing or their quality of life. How healthy, safe, comfortable, and happy are in that place. What is their standard of living? Many things affect people's quality of life, including geography and government and social issues. However, we will focus on the economic indicators that affect quality of life. And some of those indicators that we can look at to decide if this country is a good place to move to are GDP, GDP per capita, literacy rate, life expectancy, infant mortality, and the percentage of people living below poverty line. We're going to start with GDP. GDP stands for gross domestic product. We can research how much money does this country make in a year from the sale of all of the goods and services that it made. In other words, is the total value of all the goods and services that a country made and sold in a year. We're going to look at two countries in our examples, United States of America, which is one of the richest countries in the world, and a country called Congo, which is located in Africa. Congo is one of the poorest countries in the world. So last year in the United States of America, the GDP was $19 trillion. In Congo, the GDP was $26 billion. If you think about it this way, the United States made 730 times more money than the country of Congo. Another number we can look at to decide if a country has a strong economy is GDP per capita. GDP per capita means how much money an average person makes in a year in that country. The word capita means person. I want you to think about it this way. Think about GDP per capita as how much stuff, how many baskets of groceries would an average person be able to buy with the money that they make? So if you look at this picture, you will see that in the Central African Republic, which is once again another country in Africa, an average person makes $600 per year. And if each basket of groceries equals $100, then an average person in Central African Republic would be only able to afford to buy 6 baskets of groceries. Mexico is a middle developed country. An average person in Mexico makes about $17,800 per year. So with that amount of money, an average person in Mexico is able to buy 178 baskets of groceries. Now, what about the United States? In the United States, an average person makes about $50,000 a year, a little bit over. With that amount of money, an average person in America can afford to buy about 515 baskets of groceries within a year's time. That is 3 times more than an average person in Mexico and 90 times more than an average person in the Republic in Central African Republic. So if we're using the example of United States and Congo, so once again, the GDP per capita in the United States is around $54,000. In Congo, an average person makes only $680 in a year. The next number we can look at is something called literacy rate. Literacy rate is the percentage of people in that country that are educated, that can read and write. And literacy rate is tied to the quality of education in that country. If the quality of schools is high, if the country is able to spend more money on schools and on educating its citizens, then more people in that country will be able to read and write. And I want you to think about one more thing. If you are an educated person, on average, you will be making more money because the job you will be able to get will be paying you much more money if you had a good quality education than if you were a person who could not read and write. So all of these economic indicators numbers are truly tied together. Another thing you might want to research is the life expectancy in that country. Life expectancy means the average number of years that a person can expect to live. In some countries, people live longer. In some countries, people live shorter. And again, think about it. If you have good quality education, that means you're making more money. If you're making more money, that means you can afford to buy better foods that are much healthier for you. You can afford the best health care. You can afford to buy medications that you might need. And as a result, you can extend your life expectancy. So you might be wondering, what kind of life expectancy do we have in the United States? In the United States, an average person lives to be about 80 years old. In Congo, that number is about 30 years less. An average person in Congo dies when they reach the age of 59. And one more number we're going to talk about today is called infant mortality. We can look at how many babies born out of 1,000 will die before they reach the age of 1. And once again, if a country does not have good health care, if a country does not make enough GDP to be able to afford to build many good hospitals, if a country doesn't have highly educated doctors, then they will have more babies dying for every 1,000 babies that are born. So if we look at our numbers, is in the United States, about 5 babies die for every 1,000 babies that are born in a year. And in Congo, this number is 20 times more. 100 babies in Congo die out of 1,000 babies that are born. So to summarize, A more developed country will have high literacy rate. More people there will be able to read and write. If more people are educated, they will be able to get a better job. They're going to earn more money. And so the GDP per capita in a more developed country will be high. Also, the countries that are more developed will have high GDP. The total, all of the goods and services that they will sell, the money that they will make from the sale will be higher. People in more developed countries will have long life expectancy, so that number will also be high. But the low infant mortality number is going to be low. So less babies will be dying in more developed countries. The less developed country is the opposite. In less developed countries, you will find low literacy rate, low GDP per capita, low GDP, short life expectancy, but high infant mortality. So before you decide to move to another place in the world, a good idea would be to look at the economic level of development of that country and the quality and the standard of life of an average person in that country.